Can the same look work on location and in the studio? Well, that's what we're going to find out in this video. But another question I'm going to answer is, will my tethering solution work in 2 locations as well? Because this video is sponsored by Tether Tools, and this is their new AeroTrac, but we'll talk more about that in a little bit. To help me out today, I've got the amazing Chloe. Chloe's going to be the model for both locations. I'm going to start in the studio because basically that's my comfort zone. And the look, well, hopefully that's fairly self-explanatory because I have a large red balloon. We've got Chloe in a red dress, and for the studio setup, I've got a red background. But before we get anywhere near taking any photos, there's one important image I need to take, and that is to get control of the room lights. So I've dialed in some settings in the studio that are going to work great. I've got a flash sync speed of 250th of a second. I've got f5.6 for a good depth of field, ISO 200, no flash gives me this, no picture, which means I've got control of the room lights in the studio. So that's the camera setup, but why do I use this orange cable for tethering? Well, simply put, tethering allows me to see a big version of my image straight on my laptop. No need to look at the little screen on my camera, but that applies not just to me, but also to Chloe. Models aren't mind readers, so being able to see the image on a screen is super useful. They get an idea of what you're trying to achieve and then can adapt their modeling to make that happen. So let's take a test photo and see if it all tethers up nicely. Here we go, quick little test photo. And yeah, straight away I can see either on my camera or on the big screen exactly what I'm getting. I can zoom in, have a close look, check the details, make sure it's nice and sharp. But I think I'd actually like to add a second light into the background, so let's just bring one in. So this is just going to be a separation light. Its job is just to put a little bit of an edge light on Chloe, just separate her out from this red background. I'm going to turn off the main lights because if you're doing multiple flashes, it's super useful to be able to see one light at a time, and turn on the backlight, which is on 128th power. So it's a pretty low power setting. And just the edge light is lighting just the edge of Chloe. Again, I can see that on my tether screen straight away, nice and clear. I can see that I've got light on Chloe's shoulder, but not really on her hair. Okay, let's try that again. Problem fixed. So now we have a little bit of light on Chloe's hair, a little bit of light on her shoulder, and a little bit of light on the edge of the balloon as well. And then I can combine it with the main light to get the final picture, which should look like this. Yeah, nice, straightforward lighting, lots of red color, a little bit of shadow, a little bit of highlight. Yeah, that's what I'm after. Okay, I think we should take a few photos like this. Chloe, are you ready? Okay, here we go. Now, unless you're really lucky, the one thing that's going to limit you with any studio setup is the amount of space that you've got. And in this case, it's not the width so much as the height that limits how much of the balloon I can get in these pictures. And that's the studio session completed. So it's time to pack up and go out on location, which is made so much easier thanks to AeroTrac. It is a fantastic workstation. And the reason I love it is simply because I can leave everything attached to it and just fold it in half, pack it away and go. Now I'm using the basic AeroTrac kit, but with a few accessories. I've got the rock solid baby ball adapter head, so I can put this on any light stand. And I've also got the retractable accessory holder, which I'm using to hold my flash meter. There's also the AeroTrac hook underneath that allows me to carry the cables safely, but I'm actually using the AeroTrac workstation legs as a cable management tool. It's not what it's designed for, but to be honest, it works really well. And I'm also running the cable through for my battery bank, so I can power my battery on location for hours and hours, and it's strapped to the tech straps underneath. If I'm honest, the weather and the time means that hours and hours is something I don't have. You will find links to everything I'm using in the video description down below. Go check it out. And just like that, we are now on location. So the plan is to try and replicate the look of the studio here on location, sort of, but a location always lends itself to a slightly different style. And the first and most obvious advantage of being outside is the huge amount of space that I've got to play with. So that's going to come in useful, I think, in a second. But there are some things that are very similar to working in the studio. And the first one is getting control of the ambient light. Now, unlike the studio, I don't want to remove the ambient light completely. I just want to underexpose it a little bit so I can add my own flash just to give a little twinkle to the picture. I'm not trying to turn day to night. So what I'm going to do is turn my flash off. I'm going to set my camera to a few default settings. Let's see what we get. Quick little test photo. And what I'm getting is about a stop and 2/3 underexposed. I'm actually going to take my shutter speed down to maybe 160th of a second. Let's see where we're at. Yeah, my camera is now telling me that I am 2/3 of a stop underexposed. That's great, because that means I can now just add a little bit of flash just to lift this up a wee bit. It doesn't need much, it just needs a touch. Now you'll notice that I've got my same tethering setup as I had in the studio. I've got my little pocket so I can pop my flash meter in there. I've got everything clamped down. I've got a sandbag on here. I've got my tether cable connected. So what I want to do is dial in my flash meter settings, 160th of a second, ISO 200, and I need my flash meter to tell me f2.8 when this flash fires. Here we go. Pop this near your chin, Chloe. So currently it says 3.2. So we really don't need a lot of light out of this. Okay, f2.8, there we go. So I'm getting that at 1/64th power. So very, very little light is required just to lift this picture a tiny bit. Let's see how it looks. Okay, that's better. That is exactly what I'm after. Chloe is lit, but she's not overlit. Now you might have noticed there was something missing from this setup, which is of course the whole theme, the large red balloon, also Chloe's red dress. Well, that's under the coat, and just because we're on location and just because of the time of year, the coat is the last thing that's going to change before we do the photos. But the balloon's sort of in place. You'll notice it's not floating of its own accord, and that's simply because helium is extremely expensive and not exactly good for the environment. So there might be a bit of Photoshop work to do, but I'll worry about that in a bit. And that really is all there is to this setup. I don't think I need to add any more to it other than a little bit more photography and a little bit of a change of angle, and of course, someone to help me hold the balloon. Right, Chloe, are you ready? Okay, let's take a few photos like this. Okay, I'll take that. I'll take that. Two really useful things I've got to complete these photos. The first is the Tether Tools Optima 10G USB cable. It's 31 feet long, which means lots of space, lots of cable. And the other is Photoshop, because, well, now removing things like people and poles and bits of string is so seamless, so quick, it's not something I need to show you in this video. Well, there you go. That was fantastic fun, and I think as an answer to the question, yes, the same look can work in two locations, but no, it's not going to be the same look. There's too many variables at play. But one thing that's definitely worked really well today is my tethering setup. It's worked seamlessly in the studio, it's worked brilliantly on location, and the new AeroTrac is definitely going to find its way into my permanent kit. I'm Gavin Hoey. Thanks for watching.